Not trying to be misleading with the title, but the blade that I'm sharpening right now is not for my table saw. It's actually for my miter saw. It's a 12-inch blade with lots of teeth. And that's the reason why I set this up to begin with, to sharpen my miter saw blade, which is getting really dull. And you can see the basic operation. I've got the sharpening disc, which is a diamond wheel, mounted on the saw. And I made a simple jig to index the blade for each tooth to make sure that I'm grinding the same amount off each one. The jig is not complex, and I'll go into the details on that shortly. But first, now that I have the blade sharpened, I can test it out and see how it cuts. The jig is just a piece of 1/2-inch plywood, and I made and fastened a guide bar that fits into my miter slot on the bottom. And I also cut a groove across the top, and that's for the interchangeable bars I've made for the blade. These are just strips of hardwood, and I cut a slot in each end. And the 12-inch blade that I just sharpened has a 1-inch hole in the middle, while every other blade that I have is a 5/8-inch hole. So I made a couple of plywood discs that will glue onto the bar, and then I can just switch those bars out completely when I need to sharpen a different blade. To index the teeth, I have a thing that swings down. This is a piece of steel screwed onto just a block of hardwood. The oversized holes are for screws that will hold it down to the base. And the reason for the oversized holes is to allow for adjustment, so I can fine tune how much I'm grinding. The sharpening wheel that I'm using is one that I bought a few years ago. It's a 6-inch one, has a diamond impregnated ring around the rim on one side. The sharpening wheel itself wasn't cheap, but I think you only really need to sharpen maybe 3 blades, and you've already paid for it when you include everything in the sharpening process. If you're actually sending it out, that means bringing it to the place where they sharpen it and going back and getting it after it's done, and then paying them to sharpen it. And I believe this disc is 400 grit, which seems to be perfect for these carbide blades. This is actually the blade that came off the miter saw, and this is mostly worn out. This has been sharpened many times, and there's not a whole lot of carbide left. But I'm going to touch it up and keep it just in case I need to do some cutting on some, used lumber or something where I'm running the risk of cutting into a nail. Not a big loss if I break a tooth off of this one, since there's barely anything left. Now, because it was sharpened so many times before, I couldn't index it correctly, so a few of these teeth I had to freehand, as in swing the stop up on my thing here and just, grind a little bit off to get them sharp again. While I'm set up for the 12-inch blades, I might as well sharpen another one that's pretty dull. This one is in a lot better shape though, and this gives me a chance to show how I reposition the swing down stop and get everything lined up. You might have noticed while watching my videos that a lot of my tools are homemade, and I've made plans for some of those, and you can get those on my website. There's a link in the description. All of my plans are step-by-step and easy to follow. They use commonly available parts and material, so you don't have to order anything special. When you buy a set of plans from me, you not only get the satisfaction of building the project, you also help to support the free content that I regularly put out. Worth pointing out that it's probably a really good idea to wear some breathing protection when you're doing this. I can't say for certain, but I suspect that the dust that comes from this is not entirely good for you. So that's it for the 12-inch blades that I need to sharpen. Next, I'm going to do one that's actually for the table saw. And this is the one that I normally use to cut box joints, except one of the teeth is chipped slightly on the tip. So I'm probably going to have to grind that one a little bit more than all the rest. And another thing about it is I'm going to change the angle slightly as well, so I don't have as much grinding to do to get a very fresh cutting edge. And as you can see, there's tons of carbide on here, so I can sharpen this over and over again. For this size blade, I need to move that swing down stop to a new location. And I thought about ways to make this adjustable so that I wouldn't have to drill new holes. But I figured this is the easiest. And I mean, it's not every day you're using this jig anyway. So It's not a big deal to move the stop entirely and drill new holes. This is that chipped tooth I was talking about before. It'll take a little bit more work to get rid of that. And then I'm going to end this off with a couple of test cuts. Here it is cutting through, I think this is 2¼ inches of oak, and seems to be doing pretty good. Here's a piece of hard maple that's 1½ inches thick, and once again, cutting through without burning.